Right, I've been given the it's good to start, so we're all systems go. Yay, thank you very much for turning up. It's so much easier when you're talking to a full house and then I can look anywhere. As Andy was saying this morning, often when you're giving a presentation like this, you completely have imposter syndrome, especially like I'm a product analyst at Paymark, and so I'm in the product and marketing team, and you guys are like all developers and stuff. I mean, my job is to talk to our engineers and our QAs all day. That's what I do. I'm a translation engine between our product managers who have a strategy for the product and the actual engineers and QAs who get shit done. But yeah, so it's very cool. So yeah, it is a bit like imposter syndrome, but the good thing is I'm talking about something that we're the first people in New Zealand to do it. And so I'm kind of thinking that anything I put on my slides, you guys won't know if it's bullshit or not. And so, you know, if you do, just like keep it on the down low and come see me after. That'll be super awesome. So I want to take you through a little bit of the story how a small company at the bottom of the world can work in partnership with a global player like Google and actually bring something to the table. So Paymark's mission is to help New Zealand businesses succeed. See, we even had t-shirts made like that. And so one way we can do that is we can give our customers, so you'll hear me use the word merchant, and I'll try and remember to actually talk about businesses because that makes a whole lot more sense to you guys, but if you hear me use the word merchant, that's what I mean. So one of the ways we can help businesses succeed is to give their customers the option to pay those businesses however those customers want. And in an absolute ideal world, we'll do that in a way that the business doesn't need to do any work in order to make that happen. Look, Mum, Google Pay is just there. So to further this aim, we decided to make Google Pay available on the Click hosted payment page. Click is Paymark's retail e-com gateway. So when Miranda's Marvellous Muffins finally takes her fabulous muffin business online, I need to be able to accept payments. So I use a payment gateway. You would have seen some players in the market like Payment Express is one you see a lot, Flow to Cash is another one you see around the traps, eWay, they're all payment gateways. Click, of course, is the homegrown and the best. Not that that's a plug, but it is. And it's my product. And the hosted payment page is one of the integration models available with Click. What it means is it's super easy to integrate to, and it completely removes all of the merchants, all of the businesses' PCI compliance requirements. PCI is this massive global piece of, it's not legislation, I think it's regulation. Anyway, basically, it means that I'm not going to sell card details to you guys. So even though I have access to all of the card details that you guys use online, not for sale, sorry. And so when a merchant, when a business is taking online payments, they need to be aware that they are collecting, or they are potentially collecting card details. And so one way they can minimise their obligations and essentially not be able to see the card details is to use the hosted payment page. It also means that when we make any changes to the page, all of the merchants who are using that get access to those changes. So when we add Google Pay to the hosted payment page, Miranda's Marvellous Muffins, who uses a Click hosted payment page, just gets those changes without doing any work. But it also means that we need to get it right when we do it, because quite frankly, if we don't get it right, you can't pay, merchant doesn't get money, they go out of business. Sad face emoji. I mean, we'd love to have 100% checkout completion utopia. How many of you have gone online to check out and just given up because it all got too hard? I mean, I remember last year I was trying to buy some train tickets in London, and tell you what, if you want an example of how not to design a website, this is a top tip, and how not to design a payment experience, go to Southeastern Trains, it's shit. So eventually I got all the way to the end and it said, sorry, you're trying to pay with this, that's got ASB. No, we only accept English cards. Tell me at the very beginning. So yeah, so that's just one example I've got of, so we don't want that to happen to our New Zealand merchants. We want all of their customers to go on their website, put their 10 dozen muffins in their basket and have a smooth checkout completion process. And if those customers want to use Google Pay to pay, we want them to be able to do that. But Paymark aren't website experts, we're payment experts. And so that's what we could bring to the table when we were dealing with Google. And so we could help Google understand what the payment flow was and how to optimise the Google Pay experience in the New Zealand environment. That's the Google Pay button. It's just a button. There's even branding guidelines that tell us what size it should be and what colour it should be. I mean, so seriously, adding this to a payment page, how hard could that be? So adding the button, yes, it was a 10-minute job. That's not the end of the talk though. Getting that button to do something, that's where it got a little bit more interesting. So, as I said, I'm a product analyst. I'm the translation engine between our product managers and our engineering and our QA teams. So, when we first started looking at Google Pay at the start of the year, we work in an agile environment, so I knew at some point I would need to come up with an elevator pitch about Google Pay, and so I could take it back to the engineers and the QAs to help them understand this product that we were building and how we might want to break it down and build it. So, here are my payment methods. So back to my New Zealand ASB card and an iPhone. So clearly I don't use Google Pay when I go in and pay for my muffins at Sierra in the morning. I barely use my Google account. If there's anyone from Google here, sorry. Started using it more though. So I had to find out what the heck was this thing Google Pay. Well, the thing I did know, it's not Apple Pay. I do know that much. When we were looking at some compliance items earlier in the year, last year we came across Samsung Pay. I used to work for 2 Degrees, I was familiar with Samsung, massive Android OS users, it's a digital wallet on your Samsung device, maybe that's Google Pay? Not quite. There's also non-Samsung devices that run Android. So then we go out to this larger catchment group called Android Pay. When I was in the Google office earlier in the year, they gave me a t-shirt with Android Pay on it. It was very cool. So I thought, oh well, that must be Google Pay. Can I intersperse Android Pay with Google Pay? Well, not quite. So Google Pay is the current product name for Android Pay. So if any of you have dealt with Android Pay, you can now replace Android Pay with Google Pay. And that's why when Google gave me the t-shirt earlier in the year, they said, look, we'll give you this, but can you please just wear it in the garden because it's old branding. Right, so now I knew what Google Pay was. And so next step was, how do I actually use it? So I'm a kinesthetic learner. So if I am to create this elevator pitch and take our engineers and our QAs through building Google Pay, I actually need to be able to use it and touch it and feel it and whiteboard it up. And so how hard can it be? I'll just find a website and spark up my Google account and pay with Google Pay. So got my iPhone, got my ASB card, can't use Google Pay at terminals. We are the first New Zealand payment processor to implement Google Pay, so trying to find a website that I could use Google Pay on was literally impossible. Well, if anyone's had any success, please, I'd love to know. And so I went to Google and said, well, can you please give me a couple of websites I can use to play around with Google Pay? And so they put me in touch with a couple of websites, and I tried to use those, and it wasn't quite bad as Southeastern Trains, but it certainly wasn't super awesome. So I'm still sitting with this kind of high-level concept of how I use Google Pay, not really understanding it, trying to think how am I going to fake this and imposter syndrome in the grooming sessions with our engineers. But then I got super excited and happy face emoji. So I'm the mum of a 9-year-old and he's getting into science. I saw an ad for this cookbook. It's super cool. If any of you deal with children and want to do some super cool fun with them, get this kitchen science cookbook. It's by that lady who goes by the name of Nano Girl. So I went onto their website to buy this cookbook because Harrison wanted to make edible slime. I mean, seriously, turning condensed milk and chocolate sauce into, like, I wouldn't eat anything I've played with, but if you're almost 9, super cool. And I saw the Google Pay button. I'm like, yes, I can use Google Pay. I'm so happy. Right up until this point. So I might not use my Google account much. But I did think I'd set it up right. And at this stage, I'd even gone one step further. So, iPhone, ASB card, no Google Pay at a terminal. But my dad has an Android phone and my brother has a BNZ card. And so I'd actually got those loaded up and was trying to play around with Google Pay that way. Because trying to get the information from the Google site about what I could do was not particularly easy. So it wasn't completely dodgy. I was using my brother's card. It was, I did have his permission. He didn't know I was doing it, so I wasn't too far in contravention of our card T's and C's. I mean, it was no worse than giving, this card to the almost 9-year-old to take down to the local deli because it's got contactless. But anyway, so I'm trying to play around with it. This website, they've done a direct integration. There's obviously something not super happy, so back to sad face emoji. So I work with a number of really, really talented people, and I'm incredibly fortunate. So I was talking to one of the engineers one day, taking him through my problem, and he said, well, how about this? Let me just whip up a website for you and you can actually try Google Pay. So if anyone's UX designers, this was never designed to be an award-winning site. It's pretty basic, but it's got this awesome Google Pay button here and it actually works. So that is going into our test Google account. So I could literally understand the end-to-end payment experience. I could sit in a conference room with some of our other product team and also our engineers and our QAs and take them through Google Pay. So that was cool. So I kind of had my elevator pitch. I could tell people what Google Pay was and I could actually take them through how to use it. So the last question was, could I actually use it? And so there's masses of advertising around BNZ and Google Pay, so I don't think that's a surprise to anyone that you can use a BNZ card on an Android phone and use Google Pay. So we had this scenario, but I've got my ASB card and I've got my iPhone. So tried to find the information on the Google website, what banks are supported, mine's not listed there, therefore I must not be supported. Don't know, is that actually right? So I had this whole question mark around what I could do. But the really interesting thing about Google Pay Online is it's completely different to the terminal experience. So this was the most revolutionary thing for me because there's all that advertising for BNZ showing how you just tap your phone on the terminal and you can pay. But take things online, totally different story. If you've got a card that looks like that and has a Visa logo or an Amex logo or a MasterCard logo, and you've got a Google account, you can then use Google Pay. So back to happy face emoji. So me with my ASB card, my iPhone, I have got just as much opportunity to use Google Pay Online as a BNZ card wielding Note 9 user. And as I said, to help New Zealand businesses succeed, we want to give all of their customers the best possible payment opportunity. And so we've suddenly got a whole new market that's unleashed that's potentially available to them. So I loaded my own card up against my Google account. I went onto our bog standard website that one of our engineers had whipped up for me and I got to use Google Pay as myself. So that was my elevator pitch down pat. When I was putting together this prezzo, I thought this would actually be kind of interesting to have a look at. So Google Pay, it's just a button. How hard can that be? This is when we started building. This is when we started talking seriously. I didn't put the months before that because it was too big for the slide of where we started talking not so seriously. So there's a lot more that goes on in the process than building Google Pay. So first of all, we need to have a whole lot of conversations. We need to come up with a contract. We then need to build it. Oh, that's just another button. How hard can it be? And then we need to come up with a launch plan as well. How are we going to roll this out to 200 odd New Zealand businesses and not be inundated with questions? How do I use it? How do my customers use it? How do I sign up for it? So we needed to come up with a launch plan as well. A lot more than just the build. Right, so we are pretty much at go at this stage. So in order to start, we needed to have a contract with Google. So we started discussions early in 2018. April was our official discussions kickoff date, and we got the Standard International Contract. Now, Paymark's not really known for following the crowd and being one of the status quo. I mean, back in the 80s, I remember that because I'm not as young as I look. I've got a almost 9-year-old remember. When we built our nationwide electronic payment network, but we just take it for granted now. The whole concept of that just didn't exist. If we were known for following the crowd, you guys would have sent off your paper form to sign up for this conference along with a cheque. Completely different landscape now. So Google was not really used to people being so upstarty, especially from this small little company down the bottom of the world. And they were like, well, everyone in the world uses a Standard International Contract. What's the problem? So it's absolutely fantastic. I do want to call out to the Google and the Paymark legal parties. We actually engaged in a conversation. So those speech bubbles I put on the timeline wasn't just a placeholder. We actually had an active conversation over the course of a few months. We said, what's important to Paymark to help New Zealand businesses succeed? What's important to Google so that they can provide the best quality online products and services? And then we came up with something that worked for both of us. Okay, so we've got a contract. We're sitting at the end of August. Oh, part of the contract as well, we had to have this thing in production in 60 days. So no pressure, it's just a button. How hard can it be? So we got access to the Google developer docs. Super awesome API spec. Fantastic. I write those for the Click product. I know how hard they are to write. I'm seriously appreciative when I have a halfway decent API spec that I need to use. So when you receive payment data from Google, what happens is you put your card into your Google account. That data gets zipped up and encrypted and then sent to the payment processor and then sent on to the card issuer who either give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And so we needed to be able to receive and decrypt this encrypted data from Google. How hard can that be? It's just a key exchange. We just have to build a decryption engine. So we were super optimistic, and to be honest, I think we were a little bit proud. We were like, how hard can this be? What we discovered along the way is there's a shed load of information for building Google Pay decryption engines in Java. Click's built in .NET. So we were kind of like, oh, okay. So we had to do a bit more hunting. We, as a result, had grossly underestimated the amount of work needed. It took us an entire sprint just to build the decryption engine. We were thinking, we'll build the decryption engine, we'll do the key exchange, we'll do the button styling, we'll kind of have this thing out the door. We've got 60 days, we need 2 weeks. A little bit over-optimistic. And we also had a little bit of a FU moment when we were like, well, we kind of uncool the fact that we're using .NET anyway, because like all of the cool digital teams at Paymark work in Java, but we're going to really get this thing doing, and we did. And the other thing we learnt along the way was in our encrypted data package from Google, we don't get all the information that we're used to. So think to one of those online checkouts that you'd be able to complete. You put your card details in. So you type your card number, you type your expiry date, you turn your card over, you type your 3 or 4 digit CVV on the back of the card. 4th bit of information. What do you type? Okay, read the screen. Cardholder name. So did you know that your cardholder name is not actually needed for payment processing? And you'll probably find there's a lot of switches that don't actually receive it. So the purpose of your cardholder name is a good practice at typing, and it is actually handy for the business to be able to reconcile payments. So if I ring up and, hi, I've done a payment, and okay, I think I could see your payment. What was the name you put on the card? It was Miranda. Great, yes, I definitely know I've got your payment. I'll ship your muffins off to you. But because we don't need that for payment processing, we don't get it from Google, which makes perfect sense. Being the kinesthetic learner I am, as I was testing this out, I've done about the past 2 months, I don't think I have ever used my actual correct name on that when I've been making a payment online. It's all been, various forms of my name so that the business can do that reconciliation if needed, but it's not my actual name, and it hasn't stopped me buying anything online. Unfortunately, because on the hosted payment page and in some of our back-end systems, we're so used to people typing their name, it was all a required field. So we needed to do some work to turn that into an optional field. Also super handy for GDPR, by the way. If you're doing anything to do with the European GDPR, cardholder name is counted as personal data. So if you don't have a reason to collect it, please don't. So we were now in a position, we had our decryption engine, we'd exchange keys, we could receive a message, payment data from Google, and we could understand it. Super awesome. Then we could carry on down the track. So we'd been working at this stage with just I think it was literally just a boring black button. We'd made something up. So now it's time to actually make that nice Google Pay button. How hard can that be? We've got a branding guide from Google. It's got downloadable images of what of the button itself, how big the button needs to be, what colour it needs to be. All super awesome. But these are 3 versions of our final draft. And actually probably wasn't even draft by this stage. Our final design for the Click hosted payment page. Doesn't look like this now. And so even though we had all of this collateral available, it still raised a whole lot of questions. I mean, what colour button should we use? This is the black one. I showed you at the beginning. It was the white one. Did we have a radio button or not? So the principles behind making a card payment or an online EFTPOS payment is you need to enter additional information to make your payment. So it makes sense to have something that opens up the payment section. With Google Pay, you click on the button and then your interaction is with your Google account. So we had quite a long debate over radio button or no radio button. And what was the pecking order on the hosted payment page as well? So Google wanted us to put Google Pay first. And that's where we were able to bring our payments experience to the table and say, well, that's super awesome, but in New Zealand, here are some statistics on what payment forms people use. So we want to help business, Kiwi business succeed. To do that, we can make the checkout experience, at least the payment piece of it, as easy as possible for their customers. So let's put the payment method that most people use, card payment, at the very top. And so we had a bit of discussion with Google on that. And when Google Pay becomes the most prevalent payment mechanism, absolutely, it's going to go up in the pecking order. We're not going to leave it languishing down the bottom because that will help Kiwi business succeed. It'll make your life easier to pay. Let's give you the most prevalent payment option first. So Google was incredibly supportive to us over this period. They could have just said, no, we've got a partner marketing hub, just go in and get everything you need from them. They were happy to sit and work in a partnership model with us. I mean, they behaved like our partners. They would sit in on calls with us where we were talking about the options. They'd provide us feedback. They had UX experts that we could tap into. So that was very cool. So the actual building that button, yes, it was literally a 10-minute job. Deciding how that button was going to look, that took us about 2 weeks, so that's a whole nother sprint. And arguably we spent longer arguing at Paymark than we did talking to Google about what the options were. So we've got our working integration. We can ask Google to present a Google account screen. We can get payment card details back from Google. We can give people a really nice looking button to click on in order to get into that process. So we were ready, this was about early October. So signed the contract in August, had our 2 weeks building in September, a couple of weeks for building our decryption, a couple of weeks for building our button, and we were ready to release this out into production. So another tool that Google provided was an integration checklist. So here's everything you need to have done to make sure you are ready to go live with Google Pay. So I thought, awesome, how hard can that be? So we filled out the integration checklist. Tick, tick, tick. We had done everything. And then we rolled it into production. Then we did PVT, so post-production verification testing. And guess how successful our payment was? Computer says no. We're like, seriously? But we've been like testing this for like a good 2 weeks. You know, it's all sorted. So this is where things got a little bit interesting. So about halfway through building the integration, Google had introduced another couple of fields that they needed in the integration, information about merchants, so merchant name and merchant origin. And so we sat down with Google and we said, look, we've already halfway through building the integration. How required are these fields? Can we add them later? And Google was like, yes, you can certainly add them later. We want you to give us a date on when you're going to add them, but you don't have to have them for go live. Super awesome. There's 3 bits of merchant information, ID, as well as name and origin. We kind of grouped them all together. We were like, we don't need merchant information. We didn't have a merchant ID field. We didn't build that into the integration. We've been testing for a good couple of weeks. Everything was working fine. Well, it turns out merchant ID is actually required in production. So we did our first payment, went to Google. Google said no merchant ID. Computer says no. So we had to get a little bit more humble at that stage. So we needed to get a merchant ID, and so that is something, contrary to its name, when you're building Google Pay as a payment processor, your merchant ID is effectively your processor ID. So we knew we had to get a processor ID from our Google account. We decided to create a Google account with our product email address, click@paymark.co.nz, and then it would be managed under our DevOps team. So let's create a Google account, click@paymark.co.nz. You already have a Google account. Seriously? But like, I'm literally the only one at Paymark who really uses that email address, and I haven't set up a Google account. Well, maybe I had at some point. Anyway, so we had a Google account, no idea of the password, and we were like, well, what do we do? So I got to use the Google account password recovery tools. As long as you got access to that email address, they actually work. I shouldn't be surprised, but they actually work. They make it super hard to try and hack into email, but if you're a legitimate user of that email address, it's all good. So we got into our Google account, we created our merchant ID, it was all happy. Needless to say, the password is now with our operational team, and anyone who needs access to our production Google account can now get it. So we then did a subsequent release, merchant ID, we're all happy. So what did we learn throughout this process? Integration's hard. I know we were a little bit cocky. We thought, we're dealing with Google, massive global player, we're the payment experts in New Zealand, how hard can it be? We've got an API spec. But we were reminded that actually no, integration is hard. It's, maybe a little bit quicker than when we were building integrations with IRD and WebSphere and doing the KiwiSaver stuff last decade, but integration is still hard. So if we did it again, we would be a little bit less optimistic. We'd be a bit more humble. We would expect it to act like any other integration. There will be questions, and that's okay. There will be speed humps. You'll get a merchant ID at the last minute, and that's okay. And you just keep the conversation going, and it works. So our other challenge was having people spread across Asia Pacific. So the Paymark product and development team are all based over in Victoria Street. We literally sit round a pod of 8 desks. So communication, super easy. When we needed to talk to Google based in Auckland, they're down at the PricewaterhouseCoopers building, again, pretty easy. You get a nice little walk down to the waterfront, fabulous offices. If any of you ever get the chance to go up to the Google offices in Auckland, just make your meeting like half an hour longer than you need so you can sit and look out at the view. It's absolutely awesome. So that wasn't too bad. Same time zone as us, only a 10-minute walk away. We also needed to do a lot of dealings with the Google marketing team in Sydney. Not too bad. They're only a 2-hour time difference, so we book a meeting with them at our lunchtime, it's their morning time. Doesn't work out too bad. But then our main technical contact was travelling throughout Asia throughout the month of September. And that's a shit time zone to try and deal with. And so we just had to keep talking, and it just meant that things took longer. So we had to be pretty careful of what times we organised conference calls, not getting people out of bed too early in the morning, but also being available to pick up Master almost 9 from school in the afternoon. And the other surprising takeaway, which if you use Google tools, don't laugh too hard at me, but they're actually kind of useful. So Paymark, we've been around since the late 80s. We're a Microsoft shop, as I'm sure you're not surprised. You know, Google was barely around then. So we needed to share a number of questions and issues and information with our people in Auckland and Sydney, with our main technical contact who was travelling around Asia. And trying to share a Office spreadsheet outside the company is just a little bit too much like hard work. So I thought, how hard can it be? I'll use Google Sheets. Oh my God, seriously. I volunteer for Scouts, and I'm now actually, let's move us over to using Google Sheets to coordinate with our volunteer committee as well. Because you just say, I'm going to create a spreadsheet, and anyone with the link can update it. Done. Sorted. So that was super easy. It meant that people had access to the latest information, and it meant they could update it and view it in their own time. So that actually helped us speed up communication a lot. And Google Hangouts, again, please don't laugh at me too hard. I was a Google Hangouts virgin before we started this product. But the difference it makes, as you guys know, when you can literally see someone, you just feel like you're working so much more with them. And so that was super awesome as well. So it actually works. When I was prepping my blurb for Alex as part of this conference, I said, we're going to tell you about some of the fun stuff we did along the way. So we decided to build an ice cream shop. This looks a bit nicer than our initial spin-up page to use Google Pay. This link is live. You can actually buy ice creams from here. So it's a real live merchant. I will warn you that the ice creams are virtual, but the payment experience, that is completely real. But it's okay, for every 10-cent ice cream or non-ice cream that you buy, we do donate those funds to a good cause. So at the end of last week, I just signed off a transfer to the Cancer Society. We have been selling sunscreen as part of the Cancer Society melanoma awareness going into summer, and we topped up our profits from that by profits from the ice cream shop as well. So give it a go, try it out, and we will donate your funds. We're not just using it as money laundering for Paymark. So you can pay using card payments, you can pay using online EFTPOS, and you can pay using Google Pay. If you've got your ASB card and your iPhone, you're all good. If you've got a BNZ card and you've got a Note 9, you're all good. If you've got an American Express on a Windows laptop, you're all good. People can pay. So yes, Google Pay is just another button, but it does bring New Zealand businesses one step closer to helping them succeed. And it would be super nice if my Google account was the last place that I ever needed to type my full card details in. Thank you.